sometimes the person you suffer most for ends up being your deepest regret. The first time I met Emeka, it wasn't at a fancy restaurant or some romantic gathering. It was at a crowded bus stop, one of those noisy, forgotten corners of the city, where dreams often pass you by like speeding dampers that never stop. It was raining that afternoon. The skies looked tired, like they, too, were weeping. I stood under a cracked shed, holding my resume in a plastic file that was slowly falling apart. My shoes were soaked. My soul felt even worse. That day was already hard. I had missed one interview due to no transport, and I was on the verge of giving up. Everyone around me was shouting, pushing, trying to survive. I stood there silent, unsure, and lost. And then, there he was. A young man, soaked, quiet, drenched in the same storm as me, yet strangely calm. His clothes were old, his face sunken with the kind of struggle you don't need to explain. But there was something in his eyes, something soft, like a man who had known pain and had made peace with it. He didn't look like someone who had anything to offer. In fact, by every standard, he had nothing. But somehow, I felt drawn to him. In a city that rarely offers kindness, he noticed my resume was getting soaked and silently handed me a spare nylon to cover it. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't speak like most men do. But that one act, it stayed with me. We got on the same bus. He paid my fare without a word, even though he clearly didn't have much. He sat quietly the whole ride, and I kept asking myself, who is this man? When the bus reached my stop, I turned and looked at him one last time. There was no reason to remember him. No name exchanged. No promise made. And yet, something in me whispered ... This is not the last time you will see him. I walked away that day with a wet file in my hand and a strange warmth in my chest. I didn't know it then, but that small encounter would become the beginning of a story so deep, so painful, so unforgettable it would shape my entire life. Because what started at a bus stop would end at the altar of betrayal. And that was the beginning of Emeka and me. If I had known that day that the man who gave me nylon in the rain would one day give me wounds I'd never forget, I would have walked past him. But fate doesn't ask for permission. Sometimes love isn't blind. It just sees something no one else can. I had options, better ones. There was Ton, the engineer with the shiny car and smooth voice. My friends liked him. My mother adored him. He wore clean shirts, had steady income, and took me to nice places. And then there was Emeka. No car, no clean shirts, no steady anything. Just cracked phones in his backpack and 1,000 unrealized dreams in his eyes. Everyone around me thought I was stupid. They said I was choosing suffering. They said love wouldn't pay rent. They said, Nora, you're too beautiful to be wasting yourself on a struggling man. But I didn't see poverty when I looked at Emeka. I saw potential. I saw a man who, despite his pain, still smiled when he saw me. A man who gave me his last without hesitation. A man who listened when I spoke, not just with his ears but with his soul. People don't understand what it means to choose someone who has nothing. It's not about romance. It's sacrifice. It's faith. It's standing in the rain, holding an umbrella for someone who's still building the house. I remember sitting with Emeka in his one-room apartment, where the walls had cracks and the fan made noise. We sat on the floor. There was no couch. But when he laughed, I forgot the pain. When he told me about his dreams, I saw a mansion beyond the broken window. I wanted a love that would grow with me, not one that simply showed up when everything was perfect. And so, I made my choice. I let Ton go. I ignored the looks. I blocked the voices. And I held Emeka's hand, even though it was empty. Because my heart believed that one day, he would rise. And when he did, I would be there not as a stranger, not as a latecomer, but as the one who believed in him first. I loved him not for what he had, but for what he carried within. And maybe, just maybe, that was my first mistake. I didn't choose a rich man. I chose a rich soul in a poor body. I just didn't know that riches can change souls too. Some people share wine and steak. We shared hunger and love. He couldn't afford a date. And honestly, I didn't care. It was a hot Saturday afternoon, and I had come to visit him. He was quiet, nervous, looking at his broken stove, his almost empty cupboard. He apologized over and over again. I wish I had something better to offer, he kept saying. But I didn't come for food. I came for him. He found a small bowl of guri, one sachet of groundnut, no milk, no sugar, just plain survival. We sat outside on a broken bench under a mango tree, shared that meal, and laughed like we were eating jollof in Dubai. And in that moment, I saw love in its rawest form, unpolished, unfiltered, uncomfortable. Because sometimes it's not the food that fills you. It's who you're eating it with. That guri, that moment, it fed a kind of joy that wealth will never understand. I drank every drop, looked him in the eyes, and told myself, this man will rise. And when he does, this story will be our testimony. But what I didn't know was sometimes people forget the guri days. Sometimes they only remember who they shared champagne with. Love is when you give without keeping score, even when it costs your last. There are some moments you don't forget. It was early morning. He had an interview, the big one he had been waiting for. The sun hadn't even risen yet, but he was already dressed, nervous, pacing. Then reality hit. He had no money for transport. He checked his drawers, his pockets, his old backpack. Nothing. I watched him silently as frustration took over. He didn't want to ask. He didn't want to beg. His pride was louder than his hunger. I opened my purse, took out my last and 1,000. That was my transport to work that day. But I didn't even blink. I handed it to him. He looked at it, then looked at me. His hands shook, and I could see it the mix of shame, gratitude, and pain. I smiled. Go, I said in my heart. Go and shine. Go and succeed. I'll walk to work if I have to. He left that day, and I stood by the window watching him go. Tears rolled down quietly, not because I was sad, but because I loved someone enough to give without fear. But love that gives blindly also bleeds silently. When your heart chooses someone the world rejects, you learn to suffer in silence. My family never liked him. They didn't need to know him deeply. His financial status was enough. They called him a liability, a time bomb, a struggle I wasn't meant for. And maybe they were right, but I didn't care. My father warned me, if you keep seeing that boy, don't come back to this house. My mother cried, begging me to choose peace. But love had deafened me, so I started lying. I told them I was going to church when I was going to see him. I said I was volunteering at an NGO when I was sitting beside him on the floor, eating rice from one plate. I snuck out during the night. I deleted messages. I cleared call logs. I betrayed the people who raised me for the one I thought would never betray me. And every time I lied, a part of me broke, not because I didn't love my parents, but because I believed in the man they rejected. I thought someday they would see. Someday he would prove them wrong. Someday I'd say to my father, see, he made it, and I was right to believe in him. But what happens when the man you chose becomes the reason they cry for you?